there are people who do feel strangers in their own country, in their own towns and communities.
There are not many of them.
Because they've...
I feel a foreigner in my own borough. We were born here, lived here. We're finding ourselves marginalised out of the area.
Check, because these towns have changed a lot. If you think go to the 2021 census, I think 95% of people over 65 are white. If you look at the number of in primary schools, it's about 64, 65%.
I feel that we've been ethnically cleansed. It's so sad.
This country is changing fast and dramatically, and people are uncomfortable. Some people are uncomfortable.
No. Most people like the change.
Years ago, people would have a fight with their fist, and that'd be it when we grew up, going to school. Not anymore. Now people will bring in knives. It's not like the old East End. Everyone knew everyone. Leave your doors open. You knew who you was hanging around with. You don't know.
But it's not your children, it's other people now.
It is other people as well. And it's just scary, I think.
I'm going to finish my sentence, if you don't mind. You keep talking over me. Stop it.
Okay.
A lot of people
I thought
feel...
you had finished your sentence.
I haven't. A lot of people feel very, very uncomfortable about the way this country is developing. And that's what Starmer kicked.
Yeah, could be. Enoch Powell could have said all that. Yeah. Look, if I was you, I'd push that out.
What an absolute bellend that bloke is. Is he a Geordie from the North East? I was having a big argument with someone from the North East recently about a similar topic. There's a lot of people up that area. It reminds me a little bit of the Scousers. You know, they haven't experienced what places like West Yorkshire, Derby, Nottingham, London. They've been somewhat left alone from all that world for now. But, you know, my advice to people like this who live in those sort of areas, go and move to somewhere that has got what you're after. You know, go and move to a suburb of Bradford, Rochdale, Oldham, Burnley, Keighley, Derby, Nottingham. The list is endless. You know, but these lefties that live way out in areas where they don't have to put up with the consequences of mass immigration, they absolutely do me head in.
You would never get better than the East End, I don't think. And I feel a lot of the culture is moving out. I don't think there's going to be a lot of East End left. I don't, honestly. I do think it's going to just dwindle out.
I'd push that away. Most people are quite comfortable where...
I think people look back on Enoch Powell and see him as something as a prophet, the vast majority of people. Can't speak for everybody, but he wasn't totally wrong on what he said. The migration level was actually worse than he predicted, to be fair. I think he was concerned about 50,000 to 100,000, and obviously we're up to nearly 1 million in a minute.
Where they live. Now, there are some people who aren't. You can have a concern about migration, that's fine. And
that's nice of you. It's okay to have a concern.
It's concern about the change, particularly if you're not involved, you're not consulted.
No one was ever consulted. No one was ever warned. No one was asked. And any time there's been any attempt to vote against it, whether it's because they've got the Lib Lab Con thing, you know, Labour Conservative, it's two sides of the same coin. One's red, one's blue, but they're going in the same direction. One claims to be right wing, one claims to be left, but they're both going the same way. So you could never really vote your way out of it with them two, if you can, even with reform.
And we don't get people mixing in all that is fine.
The mixing thing, well, people naturally segregate themselves, don't they? That's why you end up with large Pakistani areas, Indian areas, African areas. You know, birds of a feather flock together. People naturally want to be with their own people, especially if you speak different languages and have your own cultures that you want to preserve.
I would have thought every cabinet minister now will be terrified of being asking, do you feel like a stranger on your island?
Well, I live in the most diverse city in the UK, London.
She lives in the most diverse city, that's true. However, I am confident in saying she probably lives in a borough that is homogenous. Another Gary Lineker, basically.
We're in it now.
And I don't feel like a stranger.
No.
I feel like I'm in a really rich,
Vibrant.
multicultural society.
In London, I live...
Which no one ever voted for.
But am I out of touch with people who this phrase is going to chime with?
Are you out of touch? Well, you sit and watch Last Wives of the East End. You get out your little bubble and go to ordinary working class sort of areas, even middle class people. Get out of London is the thing. Go to Bradford, go to West Yorkshire, go to Greater Manchester and see the reality of the world. You know, that's the thing with these liberal lovies in London, especially the wealthy areas of London. They haven't got a clue about what goes on in the real world outside of it. It's so secluded from the real world.
Because I don't really understand. Just because someone has come from another country doesn't mean that they're a stranger.
No.
We're talking about millions of people, aren't we? Millions of people to the point where the tipping point is coming close now. Like the guy on the left was saying about birth rates, you know, the majority now are, well, I think it's about 60-40, 60 still being white British, 40 being foreign in schools. And elderly is mainly white British, and so the tipping point within the next 10-20 years is going to be quite quick.
To me.
No, well,
So what's he getting at, other than being divisive?
I think he's trying to appeal to the people who do feel strangers and really alienated, and what he is doing is legitimising Nigel Farage and reform rather than confronting them and tackling the other issues.
Well, he's going after the reform vote.
Yeah, but
I couldn't help but chuckle at Susanna Reid's face. It's really quite focused on what's being said. I'll just try and get it again.
They're a stranger.
No.
To me.
No, well,
So what?
Yeah, this way.
What's he getting at, other than being divisive?
I think he's trying to appeal to the people who do feel strangers and really alienated, and what he is doing.
The vast majority of people.
legitimising
There. Just how focused she is on what... I mean, she's paying attention to what he's saying, but it's like... It just shows how out of touch these people are with the real world. Celebrities, presenters, and that's why I can't bear to listen to anything they have to say anymore. I don't watch TV, you know, unless it happens to be on if I go around someone's house. So...
Nigel Farage and reform rather than confronting them and tackling the other issues.
Well, he's going after the reform vote.
Yeah, but
he was speaking for reform voters.
While he was making that speech, but by the way, it was a masterclass in hypocrisy, because it conflicted with everything he ever said when he was leading the opposition. He was taking a complete reverse position.
Well, he was a strong
on
proponent of
migration.
open borders, wasn't
He
he?
really was.
Yeah.
He really was. But while he was making
No. It wasn't open borders. It was freedom of movement within the European Union.
Thing is with that though, the freedom of movement from the European Union, they weren't Europeans, so all these people had to do was get from Africa, get from the Middle East, get from Asia into the European Union, and then obviously you can make the way from there.
5% of the world in the European Union.
And he kept saying we've got to stop the deportation of criminals, and now he wants to deport criminals from our jails. He's changed his position completely. It's a masterclass, obviously, but Richard, while he was making that speech yesterday, they were coming across the channel in their hundreds.
Well, that's the point.
And he didn't say a word about
that's
it.
irregular.
He was actually...
No, that's illegal.
That's irregular.
You keep using irregular.
And that sums up this idiot completely. Irregular migration. So I guarantee when he goes back to his gated community and he locks his door, so all these borders that he puts in place to stop people coming in, but he's quite content with everyone else having to put up with wide open borders. Them poor bastards down in Kent, those people who live along the coast, even Southend, I think I've heard, you know, they land in all these places and nobody knows who they are. It's completely defenceless, can't defend yourself, and you don't know anything about these people, do you? What's the point in having this great military and navy and air force if we're not going to be used to defend the country?
It's illegal.
At 9:30 French time, simultaneously.
Yeah.
I mean, with that Pratt, whatever his name is, that Geordie, swarthy looking lad, if someone came into his property and just walked in, that would be like an illegal sort of breach of entry. He hasn't been no one's been invited in, but someone walks in. I'm sure he'd be upset about that, but he wants the borders wide open for the country. Anyway, it's just my little 2 pence on it. I thought it just came to my mind earlier. You've got the Last Wives of the East End documentary, where this is nearly 10 years ago now. Obviously, the situation has got worse since; it hasn't got better. That being said, one thing I will say is, in a weird way, the population of London hasn't actually changed. I know that sounds a bit odd, but basically, if you're talking about white British people, I mean, what's London, 10 million people, I think it is, within the M25, and I think it's about 40% white British, maybe 50% white, and you think before World War II, is probably about 2 to 3 million people lived there, maybe 3 million, you know, to go with the bigger number. So things haven't really changed in some regards. It's just increased in volumes of people from around the world. And I've been all over London, and it's still a great place. You know, I prefer it to anywhere else in the country, has to be said. But then again, I don't have to live there, and that's the big difference. So I don't really see, you know, quite as much as people probably see on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I think that's it. Cheers.
When you shoot someone, you'd apologise for doing it, wouldn't you? Can I buy you a drink?
But all that is totally gone now with multiculturalism. It's hard to find somebody who speaks English in Europe. We've always been a country where immigration has played a part, but not on the scale that we're finding now. I mean, you can go from Aldgate to Barking now, and there's very, very few English people left.
10 years' time, maybe not even that, there will be absolutely no trace of Cockney culture, no trace of British culture, I can assure you, in 10 years' time. Not even that, maybe. Everything this area stood for is being eradicated slowly but surely.